One of the most talked about books in the history of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Some people completely hate it and others kinda like it. And I personally think it's one of the best books that Wizards of the Coast has yet brought out for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition after, of course, the 3 core rulebooks. And I'm, of course, talking about Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. There, I said it. I completely love Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And although it has its flaws, of course, like any other book, for example, the title could have been way more original. It is, for me, a perfect add-on to the player's handbook. And I just think that a lot of people, there's a very vocal group on the internet that are completely destroying it and telling you to not pick it up. Well, don't let those people get into your head, and please decide for yourself if you are going to pick this thing up or if you're going to completely ignore it. And we'll see if you like it or not. That's what reviews are for, right? Now, what do you get when you buy Tasha's Cauldron of Everything? Well, you get this little fun little Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Wizards of the Coast book, which is of course great looking cover like always, and you get a lot of stuff in return for your money. First of all, you get new class features for every class in the player's handbook. You get one entirely new class that I personally can't wait to play, and especially roleplay, because it's so freaking flavorful. You get a bunch of new spells, you get a bunch of new magic items, you get rules for like sidekicks, you get rules for natural hazards, for I don't know, magic stuff happening phenomenon, if that is a word. You get stuff, you get all kinds of new rules for your Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game, and I think it is even a better add-on to the game than Xanatar's Guide to Everything. So why do people hate it? So some people absolutely hate this book, and that is for, actually, to be perfectly honest, there's one page in this book, and that's the only page. No, there's like 2 pages. Page 7 and 8 are like the only 2 pages that people are dissing on for this book. Well, I love it. I think they've done a great job of including like everybody who wants to build their own character. Like, for example, just to summarize what's in these pages, if you want to build a white-skinned gold dwarf, which in a book that I have right here, they say they have dark skin, but if you want to build a white-skinned gold dwarf, you can do that. You can perfectly finally do that. And people are acting like these rules are new. But these rules aren't new. These rules are just written down now. But they are not new. It's called talking to your dungeon master. If I wanted to build an albino dark elf, and I asked my dungeon master, and I had a good reason for that dark elf to be white-skinned, or for a dwarf to be, I don't know, purple skin, and I have good reason for that, then my dungeon master, a good dungeon master, would probably allow that, or give me a good reason to not allow that, for like, this could never happen in my campaign setting because of this and this and this. It's called talking to your dungeon master. And although they say these rules right here are optional, I'm just gonna summarize them, and I think I absolutely love them. First of all, there is customizing your origin, where you can have, like, you can customize your origin and your languages and your proficiencies. You can there's a customization thing there, and people dislike that because now you can build like almost anything. But there are restrictions. For example, if you want to I don't know, if you want to have your stat increase, you want to customize your stat increases. For example, if you normally would build a character, say a dwarf that has +2 in strength and +1 on wisdom, you can pick one of those 2 things and change them around, because not every dwarf has +2 on strength. Maybe your dwarf has +1 on wisdom and +2 on charisma. Maybe they are a kind of dwarf that didn't went on an adventure yet, and they stayed inside and they were a priest and they were always preaching to the people, and they have +2 on charisma. That's perfectly fine, and it's perfectly possible, to my humble Belgian opinion. Of course that is. There is a lot of stuff in here about that, and then there's one thing that people are really pissed about. And I see this on Facebook, I see this on Reddit. Yes, stay away from Reddit, please. And I see this even on Twitter, where there is the custom lineage. And now you can build completely from the ground up. You can build your own, you can basically build your own race. You can choose a creature type. You are always humanoid. You determine your appearance or whether you resemble any of your kin. So let's say, let's for the heck of it, build me using this little purple box that gets everybody pissed. right? This purple box gets everybody pissed, so I'm gonna use it to build me. For example, creature type. You are a humanoid. Human. You can choose if you resemble any of your kin. I'm gonna choose to resemble any of my kin. I'm gonna choose to resemble a human male. White human male. That's my creature type, white human male, right? The size, small or medium. I'm gonna say medium. Speed, your base walking speed is 30 feet, which is all basic stuff. And then ability score increase. One ability score of your choice increases by 2. I don't know. Charisma, maybe? Let's pick charisma. I'm gonna just pick charisma because I talk to a camera and people tend to know what I'm talking about and like what I'm talking about. So ability score increase +2, charisma. You can pick a feat, then you can pick a variable trait, which is A, dark vision, or B, a proficiency of a skill of your choice. So I could take like the bass guitar as a proficiency, because I don't have dark vision. Then languages, you can speak, read and write common and any one other language. You can agree with your dungeon master. People are saying the variant human trait, the variant human is now obsolete. That's the main thing. The variant human, you can also build a dwarf with this. You just choose your creature type and then you build you can say I'm a dwarf, or I'm a half elf, or I'm a nothing. I'm a, I don't know, that's my name. I'm a so people are pissed about this because they think the variant human trait in the player's handbook is obsolete. But there's like one major difference, and that is that the variant human gives, if I'm not mistaken, it gives +1 to 2 and the feat, while this one gives +2 to 1 and the feat. Which for me is a big difference. Might not seem like a big difference on paper, but it is a big difference. Picking +2 on one thing or picking +1 on 2 things is completely different. Also, I just like it. I just like you can build your own thing. And I mean, now since I read this, my opinion of it is that now the basic races in the player's handbook and in other books are now presets. For me, they are more presets, and when I have a new character, a new player at my table, I will go, hey, here are the presets, you can make whatever you want. But if I have an experienced player on my table, I will probably go, hey, you can use this thing, you can build entirely your own race. So that is my opinion on this, and I will not further elaborate on it because I've already been talking about it for way too long. I like it, and if you don't like it, then just don't buy the book, or buy the book for everything else that is in here. So what is the Artificer? Well, the Artificer is a type of, it's kind of a spellcaster who can tinker with common objects. Like, they can have like a cup, I don't know, a cup of coffee, and they can do something with it using their tinker tools, and then suddenly it gets a power. Maybe it starts shedding light, like the light spell, or it does other stuff. And their basic idea about this class is that they can have random normal objects and they can tinker with it, and they can actually embed them with magic, and they're called infusions. They can have infusions into these objects, and they can have like an X amount of objects infused at one time, and they can also cast spells. And I really like that they put the emphasis on flavor here. They even have like the magic of artifice, is that the word? Artifice, the magic of artifice. Because you don't cast spells like a wizard. A wizard casts spells by doing all kinds of crazy gestures and suddenly a fireball comes out. But the Artificer, they tinker with an object and then suddenly it has an effect. So you really need to roleplay what you're doing. I am the kind of person that when I cast a spell as a character, or when I do something as a bard, I always go full role playing it. When I cast Thunder Shock, Thunder Wave as a bard, I just say I string my most bassiest string on my bass lute, and suddenly a Thunder Wave comes out. Small stuff like that really adds to the player experience for me, and to the Dungeon Master experience, to the game's experience. So with this book in general, they've done a lot of that flavor stuff, and they have a lot of these flavor things like this. For example, there is this one thing I read that you can have, like you can bind wounds by having a little crawly spider. Stuff like that. I really like stuff like that. You can cast spells just like a wizard or a warlock who casts spells, but it's the item infusing stuff you really makes you, and it really gets like this steampunky vibe. Would fit perfectly into the Eberron campaign setting, but it would for me fit in any campaign setting. You're just a person who does crazy stuff. Like for example, if you want to build Iron Man in Dungeons & Dragons, now is your chance, because there is a subclass to the Artificer that actually can make an armor that will fit you perfectly, and you can even, I swear, you can even, it's right here somewhere, retract and do this with your helmet, that your helmet just disappears, suddenly it disappears into your armor, and Iron Man like it comes back to your face, like with your helmet. So if you want to build Iron Man, you want to go full AWOL on a super suit or whatever, this is your chance. It's right here. You can embed armors with magic by tinkering with them, with your Artificer's tools or Thieves' tools. Yeah, I absolutely like it. For example, there are infusions right here where you can have like Boots of the Winding Path, Enhanced Arcane Focus, Armor of Magical Strength. It's like the magic items in the Dungeon Master's Guide, kinda, but you create them for yourself. There's a bunch of them and you create them for yourself, and you can create and have an X amount of them at hand, ready to go at any time. And I absolutely love the flavor of this class, and I think it's a great add-on to the already existing classes in Dungeons & Dragons. If there was one thing missing, then it was this crazy little steampunk person that does crazy magic item stuff with little tools. Before we go any deeper into this module, I just want to say that if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with all kinds of third-party Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition stuff. Because that is my main thing. I review, I do previews, I do flip-throughs of third-party Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition stuff. I talk about Kickstarters, I talk about everything in the world of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition stuff. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you want to see me continue doing that, make sure to check out my brand spanking new Patreon page, where you can support me for as little as $1 a month and get great rewards in return. For example, there's a tier where you can play Dungeons & Dragons with me as your Dungeon Master, so make sure to check that out. Let's get to it. So after the brand spanking, fully fledged new class that is in this module, that is in this book, you get subclasses for every already existing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition class in the player's handbook. And I'm really happy with some of these. Some of these I'm less interested in, but that's just because it is me. For example, I'm not really interested in the warlock. I'm more a fighter or a wizard kind of dude. And for example, the barbarian, there's new primal paths for the barbarian, of course. One of them is the origin of the beast, path of the beast. I really like, with this book, I really like how they are going the complete flavor route. I think this thing has flavor for days. For example, the Path of the Beast, it doesn't turn you into a beast. So if you start raging, you don't turn into, let's say, a tiger or a bear or whatever. No, it actually gives you beast features. And it welcomes role-playing so much. So for example, if you choose to have like the bite attack, like the, you can choose bite, claws, or tail. For example, if you choose the tail attack, you can say like, I turn, my shoulders go a little bit like this, and I turn more like this, and I get like weird scubs on my face and stuff on my face, and I get like this scorpion tail that's right here. You need to do something like that. You need to explain it like that. For example, if you choose the claws, you can like say my ear suddenly gets pointier, and I got like stripes on my face, and I got little pieces of like, there's some fur on my body suddenly, and I get like these half tabaxi kind of features, so cat-like features or bear-like features for the bite attack, stuff like that. It really really invites role-playing, and really invites saying what actually happens, and not just going like, yeah, suddenly I have a bite attack and I bite the dude for 6 damage. That's boring, that's not D&D for me, so I think they've done a great thing with this. Now, another thing I want to say is, they left out the bad Xanathar's Guide to Everything humor. There's no stuff in here. Actually, the only times we see Tasha in this thing are through a little bit like little pieces and some artwork here and there about her studying magic in front of her mother's house, who by the way is Baba Yaga. which is could be really bad if you pick a fight with Baba Yaga. Anyway, so I think it's better. It's just a bunch of stuff in here, and there's no bad humor in here. For all I can see, there's like little tidbits of her saying stuff, but they don't come over as badly as Xanathar. Xanathar was just painfully, the humor was just painfully bad, and none of the jokes landed. Then there are like, there's for the bard, for the cleric, there's all kinds of, there's like the order of law, what do you call them, like the order domain. Then there's the Druid circle of spores, which is very interesting, which is these weird spore-like druids, and we know these for people who have been watching the series Not Another D&D podcast, like the first series. There is this girl playing a circle of spores druid, probably at that time from Unearthed Arcana, or maybe from another source, I don't know. My girlfriend loves it so much, and she picked up Tasha's. It was laying on the table, and she was like, oh, there's this new book, and she was picking it up, and she said circle of spores, and she was like, Circle of Spores, I want to play Circles of Spores Druid, and she's so happy that's in here. And I think the artwork is amazing. There's like this little, I think it's a gnome, yeah, there's like this little gnome collecting spores, and they have like a spore-like thing behind them, and they have even a staff that is actually just a mushroom with a very long handle. So I think that's the flavor of it. It doesn't give you like the craziest powers, and it doesn't need to. It gives you powers like you can cast chill touch and deafness and blindness. It just belongs with spores. If you touch the wrong spore, you get all kinds of crazy diseases, and maybe you even get high, or you start to see things that aren't there, or see things that are there that other people can't see. That's what spores are all about, and I absolutely like stuff like this. Now again, just to be clear, I am only talking about things that pop out for me personally as a player or a dungeon master. So there's a lot of new stuff in here, and if you want to check that out for yourself, make sure to check out all kinds of reviews, read about it on the internet. These are the things that pop out for me and why they pop out for me. And the first thing I always look at when I buy a new book is, of course, right here, the fighter. I love the artwork, by the way. There's like this instructor fighting with one of their students. They have wooden swords, and one has a shield. And I just like it that they put it like that. Like, you really have to train to become a fighter. You just don't become a fighter out of nothing. And I always flip open on the fighter, and I couldn't be happier with this. There is just so amazing stuff. First of all, there are new fighting style options. Blind fighting, which you can now fight within 10 feet range. You can actually, you have blind sight. You can see where your enemies are within 10 feet range. So you're the kind of dude that has like, maybe you're even blindfolded at a point and you can just see. You're all basically Luke Skywalker trying to fend off laser strikes from that little robot in episode 4. Then there's interception, which is kind of like protection, but different, because now when somebody, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage the target takes by 1d10 plus your proficiency bonus. So a creature you can see, when a creature you can see hits a target other than you within 5 feet of you. So it's the same thing for protection, where you can protect them with your shield, but now you can subtract the damage by 1d10 plus your proficiency modifier. There is superior technique, which is cool. I think this one is really cool, because now you can have one maneuver from the Battle Master archetype. So you can basically, like, let's say you want to build a fighter, and you're like, I really like the champion feature where they have the double crit chances, but other than that, the champion is kind of boring to play if you're an experienced player, because it's all passive stuff. Now you can like take this superior technique and be a champion, have that double critting stuff, but also have a Battle Master maneuver, so you can have one of the maneuvers you really want, and you can add it in there just to give it a little bit more, you know, a little bit more of that juicy stuff where you can like choose whatever you're doing. Then one thing I also really like, and I'm all about, and I'm creating a character using this, is thrown weapon fighting. Now that you can draw a weapon that has a thrown property as part of an attack you make with the weapon. which is cool. So I know some dungeon masters that already do that, that already say like if you wanna attack, you can actually draw your weapon in the same movement. Like for example, a samurai, they do that. Like they have like their weapon right here, and if they attack, they stand like this, and then that's their attack. Just belongs within that thing. Some dungeon masters already use that, and then you just basically get a +2 bonus to the damage roll with thrown weapons. Actually, it's basically the same thing as archery, but with thrown weapons. And then there is unarmed fighting, which you can have like bludgeoning strikes. Your fists do 1d6 strength modifier, and when you make an attack roll, if you aren't wielding any weapons, they become 1d8s. So you can have fists that are 1d8 plus strength if you're not wielding any weapons. So I don't know when as a fighter you would use this, because the monk for me is the unarmed fighter, but well, I mean, if you can come up with a great character that does that, that is heavily armored, has a freaking helmet and chainmail and everything, but still just fighting with his fists, well, be my guest. It's Dungeons & Dragons, you can do whatever you want. And of course, there's also new maneuvers for the Battle Master, or for people who use the fighting style, where you can choose one of them. And one of them is very cool. It's called Brace, and it absolutely reminds me of war movies like wait, and then suddenly they pick up their spears and people walk into their spears, and it's called Brace. When a creature you can see moves into the reach you have with the melee weapon you are wielding, you can use your reaction to expand one superiority die and make one attack against the creature using that weapon. If the attack hits, add the superiority die to the damage. I liked it. I just liked it, like just standing there with your spear and just like with your shield and your spear, and you're like, just come on, man. And then they come into your space and you just jab them as a reaction, which is basically, most of the time, it's a free action. It's just completely for free because you don't always use your reactions. How about a monk that uses the life force of others to heal their companions? I absolutely like that there's now a monk more focused on healing. Kinda reminds me of the first Guild Wars game. And guess what? The Ranger Beastmaster has been revisited. Yes, they used the system they should have used from the beginning, and that I absolutely already am using for Beastmasters, and that is they have a preset of stat blocks you can use for your animal companion, and one of them is the beast of the land, the other one is the beast of the sea, and the other one is the beast of the sky. And basically you can have a boar, you can have a freaking tiger, you can have a wolf, you can have a dog, you can have whatever you want. Your beast will always have these stats. So it is, the beast becomes the flavor, and the stats are just always the same. So now you don't have to like, I pick a boar for this and this, I pick a tiger for this and this, and I pick a wolf for this and this, which is a very cool, but they just don't have the amount of hit points, and they just don't have the amount of leveling that they should have, and it's just completely unbalanced. And although the original Beastmaster is very playable if you do it right, ask Dan Dillon, it is just not right there for a lot of people, and I think they completely fixed that. Although it was so obvious from the beginning how they should have fixed that, and I already used this. I just picked up other stat blocks from other books that I'm like, here, this is your beast, whatever you want it to be, it has this stat. So for example, the Beast of the Land has Charge, it has Primal Bond, the Beast of the Sea has a Binding Strike, and it doesn't provoke attack opportunities. Sorry, that's the Beast of the Sky, doesn't provoke attack opportunities. And there is a fish, there is a bird, and there is a freaking land creature in here, and you use those stats, which is awesome. Another subclass of the Ranger that I really like, flavor-wise, is the circle. Sorry, not the circle. It is the Swarm Keeper. I was looking for the word. It is the Swarm Keeper. And they basically are Rangers that are always surrounded by a swarm of something. They could be swarming insects, miniature twig blights, fluttering birds, or playful pixies. And there's like a swarm around you always, and you can use that swarm to create extra powers. For example, when you hit somebody with a ranged attack, with a bow and an arrow, you hit somebody, you can choose, you can have your swarm deal an extra 1d6 damage. And there is again a purple box here. Like, you need to give that a reason why it does an extra d6 damage. I imagine myself like shooting an arrow, but on the tip of the arrow is like Ant-Man, for example. There's on the tip of the arrow is a little pixie, and he's just sitting there, and he has a knife of his own. And he's like, shoot me, and then you hit, and they just have their knife ready, and they just also damage. Or they put their feet against the body in which the arrow is, and they put their feet against it like this, very small, and they just take the arrow and just Sorry for that. How about a rogue that can just sit down on their knees, aim their weapon, fire it, and almost always hit? Then there's feats in here. Feats. Not feet. I mean, there's a lot of feet in here right here, but I mean feats. There's feats in here, and a bunch of them are really cool. I also like the feats in Xanatra's Guide to Everything, the racial feats. I really like those, that they were tied into races. But these feats they're absolutely for everybody, because that is the kind of the theme of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Everything is for everybody, basically, which is a great thing. And there's one feat in here called Chef, which is basically Song of Rest, but with cooking. You have the ability to, as a part of a short rest, you can create food, not magical food. It doesn't say here that's magical. You just can create food, and everybody who expends at least 1 hit die, they get an extra 1d8 hit points during a short rest. Just like Song of Rest, I think Song of Rest is a d6. I think this is stronger than a Song of Rest. I don't know then with 1 hour of work, when you finish a long rest, you can cook a number of treats equal to your proficiency bonus. You can make a bunch of little cupcakes, and then these racial traits, these special treats last 8 hours. A creature uses them in bonus action treats with temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. So you can actually use your long rest to create little cupcakes and hand them out to everybody, and then suddenly when they need it, they take a cupcake and they get temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. That's cool stuff right there. Another really interesting feat is the fighting initiate, and that's basically, if you take this feat, you can take 1 fighting style from the fighter and add it to your. You don't have to be a fighter with this. You have to be proficient with a martial weapon, but you can be like a rogue, you can be a barbarian with a fighting style from the fighter. I can see so many great combinations with this. You can really build a really weird, I don't know, a barbarian with like, well, the defensive stuff doesn't work. Maybe a barbarian with a shield that uses protection, dual wielding, two weapon fighting, or whatever it's called. Stuff like that, thrown weapons, you can use it on your barbarian with the fighting style initiate. Then there are feats like Piercer, where you do extra piercing damage. Then there is something like a Slasher, and that is if you score critical hits, you can wound the creature and they get disadvantage on attack rolls. Stuff like that. Really cool feats to just add to your game and make your character even more your character. So after the entire section with the new class and the new subclasses, there is an entire section about magical shenanigans. There's new spells, magic items, everything. And one thing that really pops out for me, and I think is so flavorful and so cool, are the magic tattoos. You can have yourself tattooed on your body somewhere, and the tattoos actually, they give you an extra power. They first of all give you damage resistance to 1 type of damage, and you can like have damage absorption, where you regain a number of hit points when you take that damage when you have that tattoo. So you can have like a magic tattoo artist somewhere in town, and for like 1,000 or 2,000 gold pieces, he puts 1 tattoo on your body. And there's actually there's a D10 roll you can make for where you have all the acid, cold, fire, force, lightning, necrotic, poison, psychic, radiant, and thunder damage. So you can even have it randomly, like spend 1,000 gold pieces and get a random tattoo. I'm so adding this to my game. There's also a bunch of new magic items, and some of them are really interesting, but I do not like talking about magic items because I am such a big magic item fan that the thing I like the most about opening a book is just flipping through the magic items and seeing what I can give to my players, or what I can maybe ever sometimes find as a player myself. So these magic items are really cool, and they're really add on to the Dungeon Master's Guide magic items that are already out there. One of my absolute favorite sections in this book is the magical phenomena. These are a bunch of phenomena that are magical, that can just randomly happen or appear in your game. For example, a magical storm, a magical eldritch storm. There is an enchanted spring. There are magical mushrooms, and they just have a description of it. For example, there is this enchanted spring with some great artwork right here. Two people bathing in a magical spring. I think there are two elves bathing in a spring, and if you drink from the spring or if you bathe in the spring, you can roll a d6, and there's a bunch of crazy stuff that can happen. If you, for example, eat from the magical mushrooms, there is magical mushrooms. For example, if you roll a 5, the creature can understand and speak any languages for 1d4 days, which is the greatest superpower there is. If you roll a 2, the creature gains the enlarge or reduce effect. When you roll a 3, the creature regains 5d8 plus 20 hit points. So a bunch of random stuff that can happen if you eat magical mushrooms, if you bathe in a spring. So these are great things for if your players, or when your players are traveling through a forest or through whatever. You could say, hey, you see some mushrooms that are lightly glowing right there, you don't know really what they are, and then you let your players just pick them and eat them, because there's always that one player that wants to touch them and eat them and taste them. Same with a magical spring, always one person that wants to get in there, get naked, and just do their thing in a magical spring. That rhymes. That could be a great rap song. Do their thing in a magical spring. Anything. Anyway, there's primal fruits with a bunch of weird effects. There is unearthly road keys. There's all kinds of stuff. And then there is a section that I also really like. Puzzles. I mean, what is Dungeons and Dragons without puzzles? There is this great artwork for people trying to survive a bridge. It reminds me of the Forge of Fury cover. There's just some great puzzles in here. For example, there was a puzzle in here with a bunch of... it's really hard to not spoil these because they're puzzles. And there's a bunch of paintings in here, so I'm gonna spoil one of them. A bunch of paintings, and they all have a bunch of creatures on them, but you have to count the amount of creatures on them. So there's a painting with a bunch of... one werewolf, then there's a painting with a trio of gnolls. There's a painting with... a beholder, there's a painting with 2 trolls. You have to count the creatures, and then you have to count into their name, and then you get that amount, and then you get a bunch of letters. I'm gonna let Tasha explain this because I'm not really good at explaining this. Anyway, after a while you get the letters and you get the passkey to maybe enter a door or get to the other side of the dungeon. In this case the solution is all bare, but you can customize it to whatever you want. And just for the record, some of these puzzles feel really classic Dungeons & Dragons dungeon crawling puzzles. So for example, if you only just check out this artwork for this person trying to get to that door, and there's a bunch of spider webs. It's called Reckless Steps, this puzzle. It's one of those creepy classical dungeon crawling puzzles or traps or whatever. I really like that kind of stuff. I'm really into that. Like that grim vibe when you're dungeon crawling. I really like that. So yeah, that was my review, or if you want to call it a flip through, call it whatever you want, of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, a book that I absolutely like. The only thing that I dislike of it is the title. I just don't like the title because there's also already a Xenakis Guide to Everything. So why does Tasha also have everything while everything is everything else? They fixed a lot of issues that I had with Xenakis Guide to Everything. For example, this is a player book with a lot of new player options, and also a part of it is a Dungeon Master's book, but just the stuff in here just intertwines very well. And it is built so well as a flavor book. This thing is so flavorful. For example, I think Xenakis Guide to Everything has a lot of stuff that restricts people more than that it adds to the game. For example, a samurai. If you want to play a samurai, there is this class called samurai, but why would you have to be a samurai to have those powers? I mean, you really put that into like one niche And it's only the samurai that has that power. Just call it just give it a maneuver person title or something like that. And if a person wants to be a samurai flavorly, they can be a samurai. So they fix a lot of this. You can really build your own thing with this. And I mean, it's a new D&D book, 5th edition. I'm really happy with it, and I dislike a lot of what Wizards of the Coast have put out in the past, especially the adventures. I don't think the adventures are really great, the campaigns aren't really great. But this thing, a lot of flavor, good humor, great artwork, and I just like having it on my shelf, and I will give it to all of my players who want to build a new character and say there's a bunch of options in here. Make sure to use it if you want to use it. If you already have it and you want to share what you think of it and you want to point out some mistakes I made in this review, maybe make sure to comment below, hit the thumbs up, and if you are going to play Dungeons and Dragons, I hope your inspiration may guide you.